He wasn't supposed to make it through the night. The snow had been falling relentless for hours, a thick, suffocating blanket that covered the woods like a silent witness to the world's indifference. Blizzard, the white German shepherd, was chained to a rusted iron post, his paws sinking into the cold accumulation, the fur around his neck damp and clumped, each breath a puff of desperation that vanished into the gray void. The wind cut across the clearing with a sharpness that made the air feel like shards of glass, carrying the faint, bitter scent of pine sap and the distant smoke of a forgotten hearth. Blizzard lifted his head slowly, amber eyes wide and searching, reflecting the weak light of the fading sun through the canopy of snow-laden branches, ears flicking at every creak and snap of ice, every whisper of movement hidden by the storm. At the edge of the clearing, obscured by the swirling flakes, Lucas Bennett emerged, his dark skin and tall frame silhouetted against the pale, wintry light, boots crunching softly over frost-covered needles, every step deliberate, measured. He had been tracking signs of wildlife to ensure the small community beyond the forest remained safe, but the low, trembling whine carried through the frozen air drew him deeper into the woods. He stopped, scanning the snowy expanse, and there it was again, the sound of suffering so delicate, so fragile, it tugged at something long buried within him. Blizzard's body shuddered violently against the unforgiving iron, the chain rattling faintly as he strained against it, trying to inch closer to warmth he could no longer reach. Lucas moved cautiously, pulling his jacket tighter around him, the weight of his backpack pressed firmly against his shoulders, breath visible in the frigid air. His eyes met Blizzard's, and in that frozen moment, the storm seemed to pause, the wind softening as if in reverence for what was about to unfold. Lucas's gloved hands reached toward the collar, fumbling with the lock, and Blizzard flinched initially, uncertainty flashing through his eyes, but then something shifted, a recognition, a silent plea for mercy that transcended words. Lucas whispered softly, voice carrying just enough to cut through the cold. "It's okay. You're safe now." He tugged gently, easing the chain free, and the dog stumbled forward, legs weak but determined, pressing his chest against Lucas's jacket, the warmth of human presence sinking into him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Blizzard's tail, though exhausted, gave a tentative wag, small but insistent, as Lucas crouched to match his level, the snow crunching under their movement, hearts beating in tandem with the quiet rhythm of the storm. The faint outline of a nearby cabin caught Blizzard's attention, ears pricking, eyes brightening with a hint of hope, as if urging Lucas to follow. The two moved through the snow, the crunch of their steps mingling with the whisper of falling flakes, a cinematic tableau of urgency, compassion, and the first threads of trust weaving between human and canine. Every gust of wind seemed to echo the unspoken bond forming, and the frozen world around them faded, leaving only the pulse of shared survival, the quiet miracle of two souls finding each other in the bleak expanse of a winter forest, a subtle promise that redemption, though hard won, is always possible, and even the coldest, darkest nights can be pierced by warmth, patience, and unwavering loyalty. Lucas and Blizzard moved cautiously through the forest, the snow crunching beneath their feet, each step measured, deliberate, as if the ground itself demanded respect. Blizzard paused periodically, ears twitching, amber eyes scanning the white expanse, sniffing the air, tail swaying gently despite exhaustion. Lucas adjusted the strap of his backpack, feeling the weight not just of supplies, but of responsibility, the silent understanding that the survival of this creature depended upon his decisions, his awareness, his calm under pressure. The cabin loomed ahead, shadowed and silent, windows dark, the roof heavy with snow, icicles forming along the eaves like frozen tears. Blizzard approached the cabin first, nose low to the ground, pawing gently at the threshold as if inviting Lucas to follow, signaling that something important awaited beyond the door. Lucas crouched briefly to meet Blizzard's gaze, voice low, steady. "You lead, Blizzard. I am right behind you." The air was still, thick with anticipation, the sound of the wind softened by the trees, muffled, almost reverent, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke, something old, something familiar. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp pine and age, a faint tang of iron lingering, subtle enough to make Lucas pause, raising a gloved hand to brush away a curtain of snow at the doorway. Blizzard padded forward, ears pricked, alert, tail sweeping slowly from side to side, his movements deliberate, guiding Lucas deeper into the room where the floorboards creaked softly underfoot. Shadows from the snow-streaked light outside danced across the walls, revealing old photographs, a broken chair, remnants of lives once lived within these walls, layered in dust, silence, and forgotten memories. Lucas's gaze swept across each object carefully, noting details, subtle indicators, a scrap of paper, a folded note, an imprint in the snow at the threshold, all telling a story that he had to piece together carefully. Blizzard stopped beside a low cabinet, nose nudging the corner, paw tapping gently, drawing Lucas's attention. He leaned in, feeling the cold brush of the wood against his hand, uncovering a small envelope tucked between the boards, the seal cracked, handwriting faded but readable, a fragment of truth long hidden. Lucas read silently, each word layering tension in the room, the quiet revelation of a family secret that explained Blizzard's presence, the neglect, the desperation, the way the chain had held him captive in the snow. Blizzard pressed against Lucas's leg, eyes bright, a silent reassurance, a call to action without words, a reminder that trust had been placed, that loyalty was absolute, and that together they could navigate what lay ahead. The air seemed to hold its breath as Lucas processed the implications, the snow outside still falling, muffling distant sounds, allowing only the rhythm of Blizzard's breathing and the slow intake of Lucas's own to fill the space. He rose slowly, envelope in hand, mindful of every movement, feeling the weight of responsibility, the delicate balance between discovery and confrontation, the knowledge that they were on the edge of change, poised between past injustices and the possibility of resolution. Blizzard nudged forward again, ears forward, body tense but steady, guiding Lucas toward a back room, the scent of paper, wood, and faint perfume lingering, connecting dots in the story that Blizzard had lived through, Lucas now witnessing firsthand. Each step into the dimly lit room amplified the quiet suspense, Lucas's heartbeat syncing with Blizzard's gentle, measured breathing, the forest of snow outside filtering light through frost-covered windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny specters in the cold air. There was no hurry, yet every second carried weight, a balance of caution and urgency, the narrative unfolding in real time as Lucas pieced together the truth, feeling both the chill of the cabin and the warmth of the growing bond, the unspoken promise that justice and care could follow even in the harshest conditions. Blizzard sat for a moment, tail brushing the floor, head tilted, amber eyes fixed on Lucas, and in that silent gaze, the understanding was clear. They were allies, partners, navigating a maze of secrecy and discovery, a tableau of trust, resilience, and hope amid the stark white world that had once threatened to claim them both. Lucas carefully stepped through the cabin, the floorboards groaning softly beneath his boots, Blizzard following closely, muscles tense, eyes alert, ears flicked toward every creak and whisper of wind that passed through cracks in the walls. The envelope in Lucas's hand felt heavier than its size, each crease and fold a silent testimony to secrets long buried and truths carefully hidden. Blizzard paused beside a low table, paw raised, nose twitching as if sensing the energy in the room, the subtle shift in the air that only a dog could perceive. Lucas knelt beside him, brushing a hand over Blizzard's damp fur, amber eyes meeting the dog's, silent communication passing between them. This was not just about discovery. It was about care, protection, and the bond forged in trust. Beyond the doorway, a soft hiss of wind through the eaves mingled with the faint, musty scent of old pine and worn wood, and Lucas's breath came in steady rhythm, echoing in the stillness. He approached a corner of the room where a small window let in the last gray light of the afternoon, illuminating scattered papers and a folded coat, the edges dusted with frost from the cold air seeping through the frame. Blizzard pressed close to Lucas's side, head low, tail brushing against his leg, signaling that danger was not present yet guidance was needed. Lucas carefully unfolded the envelope, reading the faded writing, each word unfolding a story of past misunderstandings and hidden intentions. The text spoke of a family disagreement, of responsibilities left unattended, and the unintended suffering that had landed Blizzard in the snow. Lucas exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the room for anything else that might add clarity, noting small details, a key on the floor, the imprint of a shoe in the frost along the sill, the pattern of dust disturbed as if someone had been there recently. Blizzard nudged his hand gently with his nose, a reminder of the presence of life, of warmth, of loyalty that remained unwavering despite abandonment. The storm outside continued unabated, snowflakes driven sideways against the window pane, light dimming, shadows stretching long across the floor. Lucas took a step toward a cabinet, the wood cold under his fingertips, the hinges creaking softly, revealing more pieces of the puzzle. Photographs of family gatherings, a small pendant, notes folded with care. Each object carried history, context, and subtle hints of the choices that had led to Blizzard's predicament. Blizzard moved with purpose now, circling, sniffing, indicating Lucas's attention should shift to a low shelf where a box rested, its lid slightly ajar, contents partially hidden. Lucas knelt and lifted the lid carefully, discovering letters and mementos, evidence of a narrative untold, a pattern of actions and decisions that had remained secret until this moment. Blizzard pressed closer, letting his head rest against Lucas's shoulder, offering reassurance, solidarity, the unspoken vow that together they would navigate this revelation. The wind outside whistled softly through the eaves, the snow piling higher against the cabin walls, a visual reminder of isolation and endurance. Lucas read through the letters, each line carefully deciphered, reconstructing the context, understanding the nuance, and absorbing the weight of the story without judgment, only clarity. Blizzard remained vigilant, ears twitching at distant sounds, muscles coiled, but presence steady and comforting, an anchor for Lucas as the truth slowly emerged. A subtle warmth began to fill the room, not from heat, but from the quiet triumph of discovery, the bond between man and dog, the shared acknowledgement that they were agents of care, bearers of empathy, and witnesses to justice quietly unfolding. Lucas set the papers aside, folding them neatly, and placed them into the box, Blizzard lying at his feet, chest rising and falling in slow, measured breaths. The room was silent but for the wind, their mutual presence creating a calm, deliberate rhythm. Through Blizzard's patient guidance and Lucas's careful observation, they had pieced together the story, understood the context, and prepared for the next step, the inevitable confrontation with truth that would follow. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the cabin, a quiet sense of purpose, of partnership, and of trust had been established, a moment suspended between discovery and resolution, where patience, empathy, and unwavering loyalty illuminated even the coldest winter day. The wind outside had begun to ease slightly, snowflakes drifting lazily against the cabin windows, yet inside, Lucas felt the weight of understanding settle over him like a second layer of cold he had to navigate. Blizzard shifted beside him, ears still alert, tail resting lightly against the wooden floor, eyes following every movement, every sound, a silent partner in observation and reflection. Lucas stood, stretching slightly, feeling the chill seep into his boots, and glanced once more at the scattered remnants of the past he had uncovered. Letters, photographs, the faint scent of wood smoke lingering on paper aged and fragile. He folded the letters carefully, tucking them back into the box as Blizzard nudged the lid with his nose. A gentle reminder that the work was not yet complete. Moving toward the small kitchen space at the back of the cabin, Lucas found a faint trail of footprints partially obscured by the drifting snow that had filtered in through the slightly open door. He crouched, examining them, noting the direction, the depth, and the pressure of each step, reading the story in the impressions left behind. Blizzard sniffed intently, walking ahead a few steps, then circling back, tail wagging slightly, encouraging Lucas to follow, as though guiding him with instinct that transcended words. The soft rustle of a curtain drawn by the breeze drew Lucas's attention, and he approached slowly, hand hovering above the fabric before pulling it aside to reveal a small alcove where dust-covered boxes sat stacked. Blizzard stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the air, ears pricked, signaling that one box in particular contained something significant. Lucas opened it carefully, discovering photographs and a worn journal, the edges of pages yellowed and fragile. Each image and note revealed fragments of a family's history, missteps, and misunderstandings, illuminating the circumstances that had led to Blizzard's abandonment. Lucas ran a hand over the photographs, noting faces and places, piecing together a narrative, while Blizzard sat beside him, chin resting on his paws, amber eyes reflecting trust and unwavering presence. Outside, the fading light of the afternoon cast long shadows through frost-laden windows, highlighting the stillness of the cabin, the quiet moments between snowflakes, and the rhythmic breathing of dog and man sharing this space of discovery. Lucas read aloud softly, words carefully measured, each sentence carrying weight, bridging the gap between the past and their current understanding. Blizzard responded with subtle whimpers, almost conversational, a back and forth of emotion, confirming, encouraging, and lending companionship to the process of revelation. Lucas traced his fingers along the edges of the journal, absorbing the nuances of the entries, the hopes, and regrets that had been penned, and for the first time, felt clarity not clouded by anger or confusion but shaped by comprehension and empathy. He stood, taking a slow breath, feeling the cabin and Blizzard as a unified presence, the snow outside forming a muted, protective cocoon around them, isolating them in this moment of revelation. Blizzard nudged him forward, prompting exploration toward a narrow hallway leading to another room, the floorboards quiet beneath their careful steps, shadows stretching long across walls lined with remnants of a past long hidden. In the room, the faint light revealed a small table with an assortment of items that seemed mundane yet meaningful, a set of keys, a folded piece of cloth, a small ceramic figurine. Lucas handled each with deliberation, noting the patterns, the inconsistencies, the subtle signs that filled the gaps in the story, with Blizzard alert and observant at every turn. Together, they moved slowly, methodically, the rhythm of their interaction punctuated only by the soft whisper of wind through cracks and the faint creak of aging timber, a cinematic symphony of trust, attention, and shared purpose. Lucas paused by the window, observing the snow falling softly outside, each flake like a frozen fragment of the world's indifference, yet inside, warmth spread from understanding, companionship, and the steadfast presence of Blizzard. Amber eyes met dark brown, silent communication affirming a bond stronger than any cold, a commitment that in the quietest, simplest gestures lay the foundation for trust, courage, and the unfolding of truth. In this suspended moment, time seemed to slow, the cabin a vessel of reflection, anticipation, and the profound realization that together, they could navigate the remaining mysteries, facing the world beyond the walls with clarity, patience, and the unshakable strength of a partnership forged through endurance, care, and unwavering loyalty. The evening light began to soften, the cabin bathed in a pale, cold glow as the snow outside continued its gentle descent, muffling the sounds of the forest. Blizzard lay close to Lucas, chest rising and falling with steady breaths, eyes flicking toward each movement Lucas made, every nuance of his expression read with quiet understanding. Lucas moved, slowly, picking up a small, dust-covered box from the corner, feeling the weight of it in his hands, the hinge creaking softly, a sound almost lost in the hush of snowfall. Inside lay an assortment of objects, photographs, letters, trinkets, each item a fragment of memory, a glimpse into a family story that had been obscured by neglect and misunderstanding. Lucas studied each photograph, noticing expressions, gestures, the subtle ways in which the people in the images had interacted, and began to piece together the context of Blizzard's past, why the dog had been left behind, and what choices had shaped this small life. Blizzard shifted, nose nudging Lucas's hand, ears pricked, tail brushing the floor lightly, guiding attention toward a small envelope at the bottom of the box. Lucas picked it up carefully, opening it to reveal a note with faded ink, words deliberate, indicating responsibility, regret, and a subtle apology that had not been spoken aloud. The dog's gaze never left him, a reminder that trust had been placed and that they were witnesses together, partners in understanding and care. Lucas read the note aloud, the sound of his voice filling the cabin, mingling with the soft whisper of wind through cracks in the walls, carrying meaning and resonance in every syllable. Each line painted a portrait of hidden struggles, of decisions made without malice but with consequences, and Lucas absorbed the narrative, feeling the weight of clarity settling over the room. Blizzard rose slightly, stepping close, head tilting as if to emphasize a point, pawing gently at the floor, signaling that the story was not yet complete, that there were further revelations to uncover. Lucas followed the dog's lead, moving toward a narrow hallway that led to a secondary room, the floorboards creaking faintly under careful steps. Light filtered in through a frost-covered window, illuminating dust motes that drifted slowly in the still air, casting long shadows across the walls, turning the cabin into a space suspended between past and present. On a small table, Lucas noticed a series of journals stacked neatly, spines worn, edges frayed, each bearing the marks of time and careful handling. He opened the top volume, scanning entries that described daily life, obligations, and the subtle pressures that had led to Blizzard being overlooked, left vulnerable to the storm outside. Blizzard leaned against Lucas, steadying him, a warm presence amid the cold and uncertainty, amber eyes reflecting both patience and silent encouragement. The room was filled with a quiet tension, a balance between understanding and the anticipation of further discovery, as each entry revealed nuance, intentions, and the depth of human care that had been delayed but not denied. Lucas carefully turned the pages, reading aloud, each sentence a thread connecting him to the hidden past, illuminating the circumstances, and shaping the decisions he would need to make next. Blizzard's attention never wavered, ears flicking toward the faintest sound, tail shifting slowly in subtle signals of awareness, his body language a guide and a companion in this exploration of history and loyalty. Outside, the snow continued its gentle fall, covering every trace of passage, but inside, warmth grew through shared understanding, the rhythm of breathing, the slow unfolding of narrative, and the bond of trust and attention between man and dog. Lucas set the journal aside, standing, letting his gaze sweep the room once more, and Blizzard moved alongside, head low, eyes steady, the two of them in quiet harmony, ready to face what truths remained to be uncovered, aware that the night, the snow, and their partnership had created a space where patience, observation, and unwavering companionship could transform uncertainty into clarity, and isolation into a shared moment of purpose, a step toward resolution and understanding in a world both cold and full of possibility. The first sound came from outside the cabin, so faint at first that Lucas almost mistook it for the settling of snow on the roof. Blizzard heard it before he did. The white German shepherd lifted his head from beside the old journal, ears sharp, body suddenly still, amber eyes fixed on the front door. Lucas stopped turning the page. The room seemed to tighten around them. The wind had calmed, but the silence beyond the walls had changed. It was no longer empty. It was listening back. Lucas slid the journal into his backpack beside the faded envelope and photographs, then moved toward the window with slow, careful steps. Frost feathered the glass, blurring the world outside into gray shapes and drifting white. Through a narrow, clear patch near the corner, he saw a pair of headlights cutting through the trees about 60 yards away, weak and yellow in the storm haze. An old pickup truck had stopped near the edge of the clearing, engine idling, exhaust curling like smoke from a dying fire. Blizzard gave a low warning sound, not loud, not aggressive, only certain. Lucas placed one hand gently on the dog's shoulder. "Easy boy," he whispered. "I see it." The dog did not look at him. His gaze stayed on the door, where the rusted chain still lay outside beneath a thin new layer of snow, half buried, half exposed, like a truth that refused to disappear. Lucas understood then that the cabin was not forgotten. Someone still came here. Someone still believed this place could keep its secrets. He reached into his coat pocket, took out his phone, and saw one thin bar of service flicker on the screen, then vanish. The mountains were holding their breath around him. He tried once to call the county sheriff. The line failed before the first ring. He tried again. Nothing. Blizzard stepped backward, then turned toward the hallway, looking once at Lucas as if asking him to follow. Lucas trusted him. That trust had already saved one life today. They moved into the back room, where the second window looked down toward a narrow service road hidden between pines. The cabin smelled colder now, damp wood and old dust mixed with the clean, metallic scent of snow. Lucas crouched beside Blizzard and listened. A truck door closed outside. One set of boots crossed the clearing. Slow, heavy, unhurried. Whoever it was knew the land. The footsteps paused near the iron post. Then came a voice, muffled by the wall, older, tense, carrying more fear than anger. "Where is that dog?" Blizzard trembled once, but he did not retreat. Lucas felt the movement under his palm. It was not weakness. It was memory, the kind that lived in muscle and breath. Lucas's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. He had learned long ago that panic wasted air. He moved back to the table, gathered the last of the documents, and saw a name repeated across several pages. Warren Hale. The same name appeared on an old property tax notice, on a veterinary receipt, and on one letter written in shaking handwriting by a woman named Evelyn Hale. The words were plain, but the pain behind them was not. "Blizzard belongs to my grandson. He is not a burden. He is family. Please do not leave him out in the weather again." Lucas read that sentence twice. The room seemed to tilt. This was not a stray tied by careless hands. This dog had belonged to a child. A family had known. A family had chosen silence. Outside, the front door handle turned once. Locked. The old metal rattled. Blizzard stepped in front of Lucas, shoulders squared, white fur glowing faintly in the dim room. Lucas rested a hand on his back, grounding them both. "No," Lucas said softly. "Not this time." The handle turned again, harder, then stopped. Through the door came the same voice, closer now. "I know you are in there." Lucas did not answer. He looked toward the rear window, measuring the drop to the snowbank below, then the distance to the tree line. About 12 feet down. Soft snow. Possible. Not easy with an exhausted dog, but possible. Blizzard looked at him, and somehow the dog seemed to understand before Lucas moved. The old Marine lifted the window latch carefully, wincing as the frozen would resist it. It gave with a small crack. Cold air rushed in, carrying pine, engine fumes, and the sharp smell of winter night. Lucas removed his field jacket and wrapped it around Blizzard's body, securing it beneath the chest as best he could. "You held on long enough," he whispered. "Now let me carry the weight." Blizzard pressed his forehead to Lucas's arm, one brief touch, one wordless act of faith. Then Lucas climbed through first, boots landing in the deep snow below. He turned, arms raised. Blizzard hesitated on the sill, the white of his fur almost disappearing into the falling flakes. Behind them, the front door shook once, then the old frame groaned. Lucas locked eyes with the dog. "Come on, boy." Blizzard jumped. Lucas caught him against his chest, the impact driving him back into the snowbank, but he held firm. For 1 second, they were both buried in cold white silence. Then Blizzard lifted his head and breathed. Lucas laughed once, quiet and shaken, not from humor, but from relief. They rose together and moved toward the pines, leaving behind only a churned patch of snow beneath the window. As they reached the tree line, Lucas looked back. The cabin door had opened. A figure stood in the dim threshold, framed by old wood and falling snow, staring into the room where the truth had already been taken. Lucas did not run. He guided Blizzard deeper into the woods, steady and low, with the backpack tight against his shoulder and the hidden papers safe inside. The storm had given them cover. The dog had given him direction. And somewhere ahead, beyond the dark pines and the silent road, justice was no longer an idea. It had a trail to follow. The pines closed around Lucas and Blizzard like a chapel built from shadow and snow. Every branch held a white burden. Every gust shook loose a soft curtain of flakes that blurred the world behind them, hiding the cabin, the open door, and the man who had arrived too late to bury what the storm had already uncovered. Lucas kept one hand on Blizzard's back as they moved, not pulling, not rushing, only guiding him through the deep powder where the ground dipped toward the service road. The dog's breathing was steadier now, but his steps still carried the weakness of a body that had spent too many hours fighting the cold alone. Lucas felt it with every pause, every tremor beneath the field jacket wrapped around Blizzard's ribs. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Just a little farther." Blizzard turned his head at the sound of Lucas's voice, and in the pale moonlight filtering through the clouds, his amber eyes looked almost human, not asking for rescue anymore, but offering partnership. Behind them, a shout broke through the trees. It was distant, swallowed by snowfall, but clear enough to tighten the air. Lucas did not look back. He had learned in the Marine Corps that fear became useful only when it turned into focus. His boots sank 6 inches into the drifts, each step slow and heavy, while the backpack pressed against his shoulders with the weight of the papers, photographs, and Evelyn Hale's unfinished warning. The name stayed in his mind like a bell. Evelyn Hale. Warren Hale. A grandson. A dog called Family. A secret kept cold for too long. Ahead, the trees thinned, revealing the faint outline of a narrow road below. Lucas recognized the bend from his approach earlier that afternoon. If they could reach the county pullout near the old ranger sign, he might get enough cell service to call for help. But Blizzard stopped before the slope. His body went rigid. His nose lifted. Lucas froze beside him. The forest held still. Then came the sound of an engine. Not close. Not far. Moving slowly along the service road beneath them. Headlights slipped between the trunks, dull gold sliding across the snow like searching eyes. Lucas crouched, pressing a steady hand to Blizzard's shoulder. The dog did not growl this time. He watched. He understood. The old pickup rolled below them and paused near the bend, its tires crunching over packed ice. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's side door opened, and Warren Hale stepped out into the dim beam of his headlights. Lucas could not see his face clearly, only the outline of an older man in a heavy coat, shoulders stiff, head turning toward the woods as though the trees had betrayed him. Blizzard, the man called, but the name did not sound like love. It sounded like ownership. Blizzard's ears flattened, and Lucas felt the dog lean into him, not in panic, but in refusal. That small movement told Lucas everything the letters had only suggested. The truth was not always loud. Sometimes it pressed its body against your leg and trusted you to understand. Warren walked a few steps from the truck, scanning the snow. "You cannot keep what is not yours," he said into the woods. Lucas remained still. Snow gathered on his shoulders, on his close-cropped hair, on the sleeves of his coat. He watched the man's movements, listened to the tone, measured the space. There was no need for confrontation in the dark. Truth did not need to shout from behind trees. It needed daylight, witnesses, and the right hands. Warren waited another moment, then returned to the truck, but he did not drive away. He sat there with the engine running, blocking the road like a locked gate. Lucas exhaled slowly. The direct way out was gone. Blizzard nudged his wrist, then turned uphill toward a faint rise behind the pines. Lucas followed the dog's gaze and saw what he had missed before, a narrow deer trail cutting along the ridge, almost invisible beneath the snow. It would be harder, it would be longer, but it would take them above the road and around the truck. "You know this place," Lucas whispered. Blizzard took one step forward, then another, testing the ground, and Lucas moved with him. Together they climbed the ridge, slow as prayer, leaving shallow tracks that the falling snow began to erase behind them. The climb burned in Lucas's legs, and twice Blizzard stumbled, but each time Lucas steadied him with both hands, letting the dog rest against his knee until strength returned. Above them, the clouds thinned enough for a small patch of stars to appear. Cold, distant, steady. Lucas thought of patrols and places where the night seemed endless, where men survived by trusting the quiet signals no one else noticed. A shift in wind. A bird gone silent. A dog refusing to move. Tonight, Blizzard was that signal. Not a victim anymore. A guide. At the top of the ridge, the trees opened to a view of the valley below. The pickup's headlights glowed near the bend, small and trapped beneath the forest. Beyond it, almost a mile away, Lucas saw the faint blinking light of the ranger station tower. One red pulse in the snow. Then another. Hope, measured in seconds. He pulled out his phone again and raised it toward the sky. One bar appeared. Then two. Lucas pressed the emergency number with a thumb stiff from cold. This time, the call connected. A dispatcher's voice answered through static, calm and distant, like a hand reaching through the storm. Lucas closed his eyes for half a second. "This is Staff Sergeant Lucas Bennett, United States Marine Corps," he said, voice steady. "I am in the North Timberline above County Road 16. I have a rescued K9 with me, evidence of animal neglect and documents connected to a possible family fraud matter involving the Hale property. We need law enforcement and animal control at the old cabin. Static crackled. The dispatcher asked him to repeat the location. He did. Carefully. Clearly. Blizzard sat beside him in the snow, wrapped in the field jacket, chest rising and falling, eyes fixed on the dark road below. Lucas gave the truck description, the cabin location, the name Warren Hale, and the documents in his pack. When the dispatcher told him help was on the way, Lucas looked down at Blizzard and touched 2 fingers gently between his ears. "They heard us," he whispered. For the first time since the clearing, Blizzard lowered his head and let out a long, tired breath. It sounded like surrender, but it was not. It was relief. Far below, the pickup's headlights shifted. Warren was moving again. But now the secret was no longer locked in a cabin, no longer buried in snow, no longer tied to an iron post and left to disappear. It had crossed the ridge in a Marine's backpack and in the memory of a white German shepherd who had refused to let the past stay silent. The call ended with a soft click of static, and for a moment the whole ridge seemed to listen with Lucas and Blizzard. No sirens yet. No voices. Only snow-touching pine needles. Only the slow pulse of the Ranger Tower blinking red through the dark like a promise trying to stay alive. Lucas slipped the phone back into his pocket and knelt beside Blizzard, checking the field jacket wrapped around the dog's body. The fabric was damp at the edges, but it still held warmth where it mattered. Blizzard leaned into his hands, tired but alert, his white fur silver beneath the thin moonlight. Lucas looked down the ridge toward the service road. Warren's pickup had moved from the bend and was crawling back toward the cabin, headlights swinging through the trees, searching the snow for a trail the storm had almost erased. That was the mercy of winter. It could hide cruelty for a while, but it could also hide the innocent long enough for help to arrive. Lucas touched the backpack strap across his chest, feeling the documents safe inside. Evelyn Hale's letters. The veterinary receipt. The property papers with names crossed out and rewritten. The small photograph of a boy, no older than 9, sitting on a porch with both arms wrapped around a white German shepherd puppy. On the back of that picture, in blue ink, were 3 words written by a careful hand, "My best friend." Lucas had found the photograph folded inside the journal, and it had changed the shape of everything. Blizzard was not just a dog left behind during a family dispute. He was the last living witness to a promise made to a child who could no longer speak for himself. The papers told the rest in fragments. Evelyn Hale had owned the cabin and the surrounding 40 acres. Her grandson, Caleb, had lived there with her after losing his parents young. Blizzard had been Caleb's service companion, trained to calm his panic attacks, guide him through crowded places, and wake Evelyn when the boy needed help in the night. When Evelyn became ill, her older son Warren took over the property affairs. The letters showed her pleading for the land to remain in Caleb's name. The later papers showed something else. Signatures that did not match. Dates that overlapped. A transfer made while Evelyn was under medical care nearly 2 counties away. Lucas had seen enough official documents in his life to know when truth smelled wrong. He did not need to accuse in the dark. He needed to preserve what had been found. Blizzard rose suddenly, staring downslope. Lucas followed his gaze. Blue and red light flickered faintly beyond the trees, still far off, softened by snow and distance. Help was coming from the west road. But Warren saw it too. The pickup stopped near the cabin, then turned sharply, tires crunching as it headed toward the same road the deputies would use. Lucas felt the old instinct tighten behind his ribs. A bad decision made by a frightened man could turn a quiet rescue into something worse. He pulled out his phone again and called the dispatcher. This time the signal held. "The subject is leaving the cabin in an older dark pickup," Lucas said, voice low, controlled. "He is heading west on County Road 16. Tell deputies to slow their approach. No one needs this to turn dangerous." The dispatcher confirmed. Lucas stayed on the line, describing the road, the icy bend, the narrow bridge ahead. Blizzard stood beside him, body pointed toward the road below, as still as a statue carved from snow. Minutes stretched. The pickup's headlights moved through the trees, then slowed. Blue and red lights appeared at the far end of the bridge, not rushing, not surrounding, simply present. One patrol vehicle stopped with space left open. A second waited back. Lucas could not hear the words from the ridge, only see doors open, silhouettes step out, hands raised in calm instruction. The pickup idled. Snow fell between them all. Then the engine shut off. Lucas let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Blizzard sat down slowly, as if his body understood that the chase was over before his mind did. "Good boy," Lucas whispered. "You brought the truth this far." The next 30 minutes passed in careful pieces. Deputy Maria Collins reached Lucas by phone and guided him toward a safer descent along the ridge. Animal control was on the way. A paramedic unit was coming for Blizzard, though Lucas insisted the dog was stable enough to walk if they moved slowly. By the time Lucas and Blizzard reached the lower road, the storm had faded to a soft dusting, and the forest opened into a scene washed in emergency lights. Warren sat in the back of a patrol vehicle, not harmed, not humiliated, just quiet, staring at the snow on his boots as if it had finally become too heavy to ignore. Deputy Collins, a calm woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a voice made for difficult nights, met Lucas near the ranger sign. She looked at Blizzard first, then at the jacket wrapped around him, then at Lucas's frozen hands. "You found him like this?" she asked. Lucas shook his head. "Worse." That single word was enough. He removed the backpack and handed over the documents one by one, each sealed inside a dry folder from his field kit. Collins reviewed the first letter under the beam of her flashlight. Her expression changed slowly, not with shock, but with recognition, the look of someone seeing a hidden door open in a familiar house. "Caleb Hale," she said quietly. Blizzard lifted his head at the name. Everyone noticed. Lucas felt the moment pass through the group like a bell. Deputy Collins looked at the dog, then back to the letter. "The boy was reported moved out of state after his grandmother passed," she said. "No one in town saw him again." Lucas placed the photograph in her hand. The beam of the flashlight caught the blue ink on the back. "My best friend." Blizzard stepped forward and touched his nose gently to the edge of the picture. No one spoke. The cold seemed to soften around them. Deputy Collins swallowed, then carefully tucked the photograph into an evidence sleeve. "We will find out where Caleb went," she said. Lucas believed her, not because of the badge, because of the way she said the boy's name, as if it belonged to someone still worth searching for. Blizzard leaned against Lucas's leg, exhausted, trembling lightly, but no longer alone. Above them, the clouds began to break apart, and a pale strip of moonlight fell across the road, across the paw prints, across the place where a secret had finally stepped out of the snow. By the time the animal control van arrived, the snow had slowed to a fine silver mist, and the whole road seemed washed clean beneath the emergency lights. Blizzard stood beside Lucas with the field jacket still wrapped around him, his head low, his body tired, but his eyes clear enough to follow every person who came near. The animal control officer, a quiet man named Daniel Price, knelt several feet away and let Blizzard choose the distance. He did not reach too fast. He did not speak too loudly. He simply opened a thermal blanket and placed it on the snow like an offering. Blizzard looked up at Lucas. That was the question. Lucas answered by lowering himself beside the dog and resting one steady hand against his shoulder. "It is all right," he said softly. "He is here to help." Blizzard stepped forward once, then again, and let Daniel wrap the blanket around his back. The dog's eyes closed for the briefest moment, and Lucas felt something inside himself. Loosen, something he had not realized he had been holding since the first whine carried through the trees. Deputy Maria Collins stood nearby, speaking into her radio, her voice calm, but her eyes kept returning to the photograph sealed in evidence. Caleb Hale. The name had changed the night. It was no longer only about a neglected dog or a hidden property transfer. It was about a boy who had vanished from the life he had known, a grandmother who had tried to protect him, and a white canine who had remembered what people had tried to forget. Lucas watched as the deputies marked the cabin road and arranged for a search of the property at first light. No one rushed. No one treated the evidence carelessly. Every letter, every receipt, every page from Evelyn's journal was placed where it belonged, not as treasure, not as drama, but as proof that a quiet woman's warning had finally been heard. Blizzard leaned into Lucas's leg again, and Lucas looked down to find the dog staring toward the dark line of pines. Not the cabin, not Warren, farther than that. As if somewhere beyond the ridge there was another scent, another memory, another heartbeat still waiting. Deputy Collins approached with her notebook tucked under one arm. "Staff Sergeant Bennett," she said gently, There is something you should know. Lucas turned to her. Blizzard lifted his head. Collins glanced at the photograph before continuing. Evelyn Hale had a sister in Idaho. We found an old contact in county records. Dispatch reached a welfare office there while we were waiting. Caleb was placed with relatives after Evelyn died, but the records show there were questions about how that happened. They are pulling the file tonight. Lucas absorbed that in silence. The cold air moved between them, carrying the smell of pine, diesel, wet wool, and snow. Is he alive? Lucas asked. Collins nodded once. As far as the record shows, yes. He would be about 14 now. Blizzard's ears lifted at the sound of the answer, though he could not know the words. Or maybe he knew enough. Maybe hope had a scent all its own. Daniel Price opened the back of the van, where warm blankets and a padded crate waited. Blizzard hesitated when he saw it. Lucas understood why. A door, a confined space, the unknown. He crouched in front of the dog, bringing his face close enough for Blizzard to see him clearly. This is not a cage, he whispered. This is a ride home from the cold. Blizzard studied him, amber eyes reflecting red and blue light, snowflakes melting on his lashes. Then, with slow trust, he stepped into the van. Daniel secured the blanket around him, leaving the crate door open until Blizzard settled. Lucas stayed beside him, one hand resting near the dog's paw. The veterinarian in town was 12 miles away, down a winding road made slick by snow, but Lucas rode in the back of the van without hesitation. He listened to Blizzard breathe. He watched the frost on the window blur the passing pines into ghosts. He thought of Caleb at 9 years old, arms around a white puppy, and Evelyn writing careful notes because she feared no one would listen after she was gone. At the clinic, warm light spilled across the parking lot like dawn arriving early. Dr. Hannah Reeves met them at the door in a navy coat over green scrubs, her gray hair pulled back, her expression soft but focused. She examined Blizzard with patient hands, checking his paws, his temperature, his neck where the collar had rubbed, his tired eyes. She spoke to him as if every word mattered. "You made it, handsome boy," she said. "Let us keep you warm." Blizzard lay on the padded exam table while Lucas stood beside him. When Dr. Reeves brought a bowl of water, Blizzard drank slowly, then rested his muzzle against Lucas's sleeve. The room was quiet except for the hum of the heater and the faint tapping of snow against the window. After the examination, Dr. Reeves looked at Lucas and nodded. He is cold, exhausted, and underfed, but he is stronger than he looks. With rest, food, and care, he has a very good chance. Lucas looked down at Blizzard. The dog's eyes were half closed now, but his paw shifted until it touched Lucas's hand. A small movement, a decision, a prayer without words. Lucas had seen grand ceremonies, flags folded with perfect hands, medals pinned under bright lights, crowds standing in respect. But none of them felt as sacred as that tired paw resting against his fingers in a small-town veterinary clinic while snow fell outside. Deputy Collins called just before midnight. She had spoken with Idaho. Caleb was being located. There would be interviews, paperwork, courts, and time. Nothing would be simple. Truth rarely arrived clean, but it had arrived. Lucas ended the call and looked at Blizzard, who slept under a blue blanket with the photograph of Caleb printed in his memory, if not in his sight. "We found your boy," Lucas whispered. Blizzard did not wake fully. His tail moved once beneath the blanket. Just once. Enough. Outside, the storm finally broke, and beyond the clinic window, the clouds opened to a narrow band of stars. Lucas stayed until morning in the chair beside Blizzard, boots still wet, hands still cold, heart strangely warm. Some rescues begin with a broken chain. Some begin with a dog who refuses to stop remembering. And some begin in the snow, when mercy bends down, lifts what the world forgot, and carries it toward the light.